So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Political No Brainer podcast, where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. I'm thrilled to be joined by Kevin Howard, an author, a businessman, and now a philanthropist, if you will, I would say. Charlie Heinemann, an extremely talented professional. I know we're going to not necessarily dive into what his profession is, but that's okay. And it's an important profession. It's one that's more important than ever these days. And myself, I like to consider myself a social entrepreneur. I used to consider myself a political activist. I read Charlie Koch's book, and I realized political activists generally run for office. I think I'm done with that. So I'm just a social entrepreneur at this point. He coined the phrase, not me, Charlie Koch, a philanthropist, if you will, and a political activist, if you will, but he considers himself a social entrepreneur, so we'll call him that. We're going to cover three topics today. We're going to keep it on three topics. Like I prefaced before to both Charlie and Kevin before we were recording, is generally speaking, we go wide and we go long on these three topics. So it doesn't mean we're gonna really mitigate the conversation by any means, but we are going to concentrate. And the number one topic is Venezuela. The number two topic is the Supreme Court and difficult decisions coming up, and why do they backload them towards the time and period where a president is not necessarily so popular, or according to all precedent, becoming a lame duck president? Why do they backload them? Why do they wait for that period in time? I don't know that we're going to answer the question why, but there is three specific instances where it's coming up soon. The discussions will be in January. Generally, the opinions will be 6 to 8 months later, which is June to August. And then those decisions will be final. What they've done on those decisions so far is kick the ball down kick the can down the road, I guess you say. And the third topic, just to clarify, MJT's tax revolt. MJT suggesting to many taxpayers, just don't pay your taxes. Just don't do it. Like Nancy Reagan said, just say no. And
that's number four then?
Number three.
Number three.
So we're going to start with Venezuela, jump right into Supreme Court, and then MJT's just say no. Just say no to taxes, I guess you will. I don't know if anybody told MJT if you say no to taxes, you're generally going to be penalized heavily, and your life will turn to shit immediately, like they did the star of Sanford's.
Who's MJT?
Marjorie
Taylor Greene.
MTG.
No, MTG. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's my dyslexia kicking
Good
in.
job, Charlie.
Jordan the third.
Coach was trying to call it audible. You
Marjorie Junior Trump.
No, at first I thought I'm like, oh, I'm like, maybe he's talking about someone different.
No, Marjorie MTG. I apologize. The acronym eludes me.
She's frozen on my screen right now. Meet the press. I got a great shot of her.
Somehow she's resigning, and she's more in the Klieg lights than ever before.
Oh,
how does that
work? Are you kidding? She's unshackled now. She's unshackled.
That's part of the plan.
Can we have?
Yes, now Charlie is now talking the truth.
Much more now that you see her kind of withdrawing from her media persona. You can see the intelligence working there. So she's working it. So it's interesting.
Yeah. But so I'll leave out.
Maybe she's just going to vanish and take the money and run. Who knows? But
I will leap out there, Coach, on the Venezuela, since I am the only Trump voter on the podcast. So first and foremost, I'll put myself in the bullseye there, because I did vote for Trump, and well, here we go. I've made the contention that the only way you can understand what Trump is doing is that you have to ignore what he's saying, because he says a lot of crazy shit, excuse the language, but it's the truth. AKA quoting Joe Rogan and his interview with Trump. But what this indicates right here is now this is the execution of this new world order. So Trump's argument has been from the time he had Rubio go out there on Megyn Kelly the week after he took office and announced the age of American hegemony is over, and that this is an age where there's three superpowers, and that we're going to negotiate with Russia and we're going to negotiate with China directly instead of fighting all these surrogate wars, right? And the reestablishment of zones of influence, right? And that if you look at the actions that Trump has done, from the Gulf of America, from naming Canada the 51st state, from claiming Greenland, notwithstanding what Denmark says, right, to what he's doing in Venezuela, but he's actually doing it, right? Okay, I've contended that in no way, based on who voted for him, based on his coalition, would he actually start another war, right? Okay, that's blown out of the window. He is a lame duck. He does not have to face the voters again. But what he's doing is he's in a very naked way. The new rules-based order of the world is that each of these superpowers, within the context of their zone of influence, right, exert control. And to the extent that nations step out of line, this is what they can expect. And this is Trump saying the signal for the Western Hemisphere. Western Europe needs to take this seriously. Canada needs to take this seriously, right? Look what China is doing around Taiwan right now, right? This is an interpretation of what Russia did in Ukraine, right? The idea is that these superpowers are now saying that that within their zones of influence, countries that do not yield to them can be expected to get destroyed. Right?
100%.
Yep. And this is so also I'm saying this is a notice to the world. Right. And right. So I mean, where we're taking leaders, I mean, I don't know, Maduro's in the basement somewhere. Oh my God. So as a person I didn't vote for that. But again, this is normal in American politics. No one who voted for Joe Biden expected a genocide, right? No one, I'm sorry, no one who voted for Obama expected that we would pay AIG, we would take over AIG and make the bankers whole in terms of the insurance that bankrupted AIG. No one who voted for Obama thought that that's what was going to be the result.
What was the reference to genocide? I missed that. And Biden.
Oh, well,
Gaza.
the idea is Gaza, right? The idea is when we voted for Biden as the adult in the room, we in no way did we think that we would be financing and diplomatically justifying the genocide. No one would have supported that. But that's what I'm saying. It's not unusual, tragically, in American politics for presidents to betray the very people who voted for them. This has been part of my contention. And this is Trump doing that in terms of a huge portion of his coalition was end the forever wars, right? And I mean, this
was getting out of the forever war.
No. And stop the process of exercising U.S. foreign policy through covert and overt military action, through financing counterinsurgencies, through regime change, right? This is exactly why he made the deal last August to bring in Tulsi Gabbard. That's what Tulsi Gabbard is all about. And she is a lifelong Democrat, is about ending the forever wars and opposing the use of military force for regime change. This was her stance in Syria against Assad. And so what I'm saying here basically is, yes, this is Trump's betrayal of that coalition by him literally, executing regime change in Venezuela, taking the leader and bombing them directly.
I think similar to those other ones, he's not going to lose a lot of his base, even though against it. And a lot of them, it's funny. I was just watching Joe Walsh this morning, one of the shows, and they were asking him about like the people he's talked to so far in MAGA world, their reaction. He's like, mostly positive, mostly like, oh yeah, he's kicking ass. That's in general what we wanted. And they're like, what about the no more wars thing? And they'll just kind of work their way around it. Similar to the supporters of Obama and Biden, where they, even though they did a lot of things in those lame duck years that their supporters never were supported, a lot of supporters, politics has become so cultish on both sides that a lot of them are just like, he's my guy. I'll find a way to make that make sense. But I 100% agree with what you're saying of Trump doing this. I know we alluded to this in our previous conversations about these spheres of influence. It makes me think, if this regime, if this Trump group, say, remains in power one way or another, whether through him or someone, say, they win the next election. What would, with this new policy, what would our reaction be to China going in and taking Taiwan? It wouldn't be defense of Taiwan. You know what it would be? We'd take Cuba. It would be back and forth like that. Like that.
Right.
Would be,
Yes.
that would
I think
fall
this
into
is
this line of thinking. Like, well, we're not going to go way over there and protect them, but if you're going to do that, well, we got a little island. You're probably pissed off that we take it. Boom. I mean, that's what we're looking at. I think, as scary as that seems, but I think it absolutely is a sign. It's an abdication of Taiwan. I mean, it has to be.
It is total abdication, and China is executing on that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the moves of the Chinese military. I mean, look, I'm just saying, Taiwan understands that they are being circled right now. Right?
Oh no, and they're upping the timeline on that because they want to do it while Trump's in office. They don't want someone in there who may actually defend Taiwan. So I think this all but guarantees China action in Taiwan in the next 2 years. And I really do think if Trump's in office, I think the reaction would be maybe not specifically Cuba, although that would probably be the easiest and make the biggest stance. It'd be like, well, all right, they're right there. We got an island close to us too. So that's that. I absolutely agree that that's always where he thought he was going. I think he loves the lame duck status. I mean, he's talking about being untethered.
It frees him. He doesn't have to face the voters ever again.
No, and there's all this back and forth. They're talking about Congress and when are we going to go to Congress? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They'll dance around that. They're not going to hold back. They're not going to really go and wait for authorization from Congress. At no time is that going to happen. And it'll be the same thing we do. They'll wait for it to work through the court system. Democrats can hem and haw and write very stern letters as they're wont to do, and then eventually someone will file the appropriate lawsuit or multiple ones, and it'll slowly work its way. This kind of how this leads into our other thing about the Supreme Court. Things are never more clear, I think, and what to expect in the next 2.5 years or so. Yeah.
So allow me to do one thing. Let me welcome Beth and let me get her up to speed. So Beth, hey there.
I love the beach scene. I'm ready to put on my flip-flops. Let's do this.
Beth, you on? I want to get her up to speed on the 3 topics. All right, so let's be serious.
She'll be back in a second.
We're calling lame duck one thing. We're also calling, which again, like I said, we veer off topic a little bit. He's not well. And let me make this one thing clear. Republicans don't make the same mistakes Democrats make. They're not going to put him up for – okay, Beth, you there? So he's not well. So Republicans are not going to allow him to have any more influence than he's worthy of, as they did with Joe Biden. They're not going to let a bumbling idiot lead the party. And so they're not going to make that same mistake. Beth, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Beth.
You're awesome. I want to tell you what happened. So initially it was made to me a suggestion by Laura that we keep it on 3 topics, and we decided on those 3 topics. Number 1 is Venezuela. Number 2 is the Supreme Court, and we'll get into that. That they generally backload the most important decisions and the most contentious decisions towards a presidency where he loses favor or he becomes a lame duck president. And I was just pointing out briefly before you got on that it's not – Donald Trump not only faces the fact that he's a lame duck president, he's not well. He's aging. Nobody's going to be an effective president at the age of 84 or 82 or whatever the hell his age is. He's already faltering. And I had just said one thing I give Republicans credit for is playing the game better than Democrats. They're not going to let a bumbling idiot have too much influence. And then the third – so the first topic is Venezuela. Number 2 topic is Supreme Court and backloading cases to the point where the president has lost a little favor. And the third is MJT's tax suggestion that you don't pay your taxes. So right now we're on Venezuela. Charlie and Kevin cover the topic in an enormous great way. And it essentially alludes to the fact that China is now got the green light to overtake Taiwan. What's interesting about that is like we talked about briefly was Marjorie Taylor Greene and her influence on the never-ending wars. She became the director of Central Intelligence and director of National Intelligence in the sense that she had a connection with the Assad family of Syria. Before she ever took office, the Assad family in Syria was removed from power, but still she got the job. So now we're on to the new topic of how do we get it down to 3 superpowers?
You're referring just to you're referring to Tulsi in that last statement.
Tulsi Gabbard, right? What do they call her now?
You said Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, that's why
Tulsi Gabbard.
It was the mysterious MJT, still to be identified political player that Trippy has created.
Coach Trippy, what are you doing, my friend?
I did. I was a little confused.
Tulsi Gabbard has become the national security advisor to the president. She has the job of reading about 19 national security reports first thing in the morning and then summarizing them to the president. And she got that job with her connection to the Assad family. Before she ever took office, the Assad family was removed from power.
Coach, how do you put out that information? I mean, look at Tulsi Gabbard's background. That is a matter of public record. I mean, my gosh, man. She grew up in the Democratic Party in Hawaii. Okay, this is not Mississippi. That's a progressive state, right? Deep blue, right? Okay. She volunteered for the military, right? In response to 9/11. She has served in combat. She is still in active duty in the military and stuff like that. She got the role in opposing. Part of her relationship with Syria was that she opposed the use of military force for regime change, primarily in the case of Syria, because our ally in that effort to overthrow Assad was Al-Qaeda. Okay. Okay. You don't have to trust me. Go back to the Senate hearing where she got confirmed to be the director of national intelligence and watch Republicans and Democrats in the Intelligence Committee from the establishment parts of the party lambaste her for her as if she's committing treason for opposing the overthrow of Assad, when the reason why she did it is she refused to accept Al-Qaeda as an ally after they killed 3,000 Americans, right? I mean, so please, to say that she got the position because she has a relationship with Assad's family, right? I mean, my God, Coach, where are you drawing this from? News of the World in the supermarket line?
Something prevails in the interview process, and whatever it is.
That was just horrible.
I'm not arguing that dedication to service by any means. I didn't serve in the military.
That is horrible.
Dedication to service. I am saying, though, first of all, when you think of Syria, there was numerous reasons that the Assad family fell from power. It was not necessarily the idea that the United States was going to remove him from power. The dissension from the people themselves was the idea of that Assad fell from power. Now, the idea that she got the job, I was just alluding to the fact that there was this irony that her connection to the Assad family, and she got the position that ultimately the Assad family had already fallen. That's all I was alluding to. Not saying that's the only reason she got the position. But you do.
The idea that has anything relevant to how she got to position, given the public record that we know. We know her public record, that she was a member of Congress, that she was a co-chair of the Democratic National Committee in 2020, that she ran for the presidency against Joe Biden in 2020. That this is, I mean, we all this is a matter of public record, that she completely eviscerated Kamala Harris in the second debate in the 2020 elections, right? Okay, this is the history of who Tulsi Gabbard is. For you to say, and what's what you said, right, is that she got the position as director of national intelligence in the Trump administration because of her relationship with the Assad family. I'm sorry, man, that is straight out of trash media. Like I said, News of the World in the line in the supermarket. You pick up the paper, and right next to the baby with 3 heads is the story that Tulsi Gabbard got the DNI role because of her relationship with the Assad family. You can't get further from the truth than that.
If I ultimately imply that the only reason she got the job, it's not the only reason.
Well,
that's not even a relevant reason.
The fact that she's a Russian mole. That was part of it too.
We've
gotten like way off topic here, guys. Why don't we?
Yeah, we gotta stay back.
You guys could fight about Tulsi Gabbard. Let's get back
to Venezuela. So we removed, and this is nothing new. I mean, we invaded Nicaragua and removed Noriega. We invaded Iraq and removed Saddam Hussein. President Obama also said he was going to remove all the troops from Afghanistan and ultimately added 30,000 troops. One of the things that was most interesting about Venezuela was something Kevin alluded to. It's all about oil. It's not about anything. The drug boat that he just blew up had marijuana on it, and the president just declassified marijuana. The irony there is you just blow up 12.
If you guys watch that, if you want to call it a press conference, I thought it was, a bunch of guys pleasuring themselves on national TV yesterday in that press conference. But Trump really didn't deny that it was all about oil. In fact, he kind of expressed it in so many terms, and he would always say, that, and he goes, for the Venezuelan people, of course. And,
right.
And the oil we're going to take back. So, he's not, even for Trump, he's not even trying to hide it at all. It's like, no, we want their oil, we want their resources, we want control of another nation state in our hemisphere, and what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting, too, if you want to talk about where this generation is going to go, and, this is going to be, I hope, the most consequential thing he's probably done in office, right? That in his last 2 years in office, or 2.5 years, whatever that is. Notice who wasn't on that stage yesterday. And notice who was.
J.D. Vance was not, right?
No J.D. Vance. And there's Marco Rubio running the whole thing. So the direction it's going and where he wants, I imagine he hopes his MAGA support will eventually go with, is Rubio. Because it's certainly not Vance. And the idea that Vance was on the stage for national security reasons, as if when Venezuela was going to do a counterattack and hit us in the homeland. Come on. Ridiculous. So clearly, I think that, if nothing else, a side note to the Venezuela thing is you definitely see where, if it's someone within the cabinet, where Trump, where his loyalty is going to lie towards, the next term. If it's not Rubio, it's going to be someone in that separate sphere of the current administration. It certainly ain't going to be J.D. Vance.
Charlie, I would suggest to you that this is issue specific on the use of force against Venezuela to grab the resources and to claim and to execute his spheres of influence, new rules of the world, right?
This it may be issue specific, but it's certainly the most dramatic.
All I'm saying is
done. So if he's going to put his mark on something, and he's got Rubio there with him at the conference, and Rubio making all his comments, and his vice president is nowhere to be seen, I'm just saying, I think the way the wind is blowing is towards a future that Marco Rubio.
What I'm trying to say to you here is who amongst his coalition would support that type of action? And that's the neoconservatives. I'm sorry. Rubio is a neocon. Right. And so he's using his Secretary of State as a neocon to advocate a policy that happens to work for him right now.
But you don't think that's the direction in general?
The tariff regime, the neocons do not support the tariff regime, right? All of a sudden, you're going to see J.D. Vance and the people who support bringing the jobs back to the United States. And that's where Elon Musk stepped off the stage and all that stuff. He's only leveraging those people within the coalition for a specific issue that to get their support for this issue. The neocons can stand behind using military force to advance the interests of the United States. That's what they've done for 32 years, right? And that's what he's using. Check him out when we flip the switch on this issue of tariffs. I'm just saying to you,
I think
right? The neocons oppose him negotiating with Putin. The neocons oppose him negotiating with Xi. Right. But he's doing that anyway. And so this is all I'm saying. I don't think it extrapolates across his whole agenda that now he's going to be a neocon. No, he's trying to crush American hegemony, which is what the neocons created with the neoliberals. But if this is just like him bombing Iran, that's the neocons saying, hey, we can set Iran back in your negotiations to get them not to build a nuclear weapon if we can destroy their uranium. Okay, he fell for that trap. They didn't destroy uranium. Okay, here's another opportunity for the neocons to have their way. We will take Maduro. We will take the oil. This is Iran's oil in 1954, 1953 with Mossadegh and stuff like that when when the CIA unseated the Iranian president, right? Okay, over the oil, right? So you're absolutely right. I'm just saying it's not beyond that unless he starts being a neocon on all these other issues. He's not. He's just an opportunist.
Right,
Isn't this
and his opportunity is going to be in those type of neocon moves because it's not not so much domestically related. Especially, again, we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court. When it comes to these tariffs, it's going to be an interesting thing because they desperately want to give him most of what he wants.
Yeah.
But I still think they're gonna reel that back, or they're gonna have to do it in a way where they're not gonna have to pay anyone back because that will make it impossible for the economy in general to go forward. I mean, it's insane. You look into what it would take if they say they were always illegal and that money's got to somehow be returned to who? The people, the businesses, the countries. I mean, that's like an impossible task. Yeah. So they're going to find a way to cut that out of it. At the same time, you can't do that.
Let me say one thing. The neocons love when America does what they do best, show off their hardware. They love it, whether it's effective or not. And let's be clear, the Iran attack was ineffective. They've already dug out the third tunnel. The assumption was whether he's going to make this move or not, we're going to move much of the uranium out of these sites. So you've now got enriched uranium in parts of Iran we probably never even heard of. You might have them in people's garages for all you know. I mean, we don't know. The American people are not the Iranian. The Iranian people are not the American people. If one of the elite forces in Iran says we are parking this tractor trailer full of uranium in your driveway, that tractor trailer will be sitting in that driveway and they will pray over it every day if that's what they're instructed to do. So we have not depleted the Iranian uranium force by any means, whether we sent B-1 bombers on a 32-hour flight that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said nobody congratulated our pilots when in fact I did say it was an incredible mission. It was just an ineffective mission. But now, Beth, I would like you to forge your opinion on this. And then I do want to get to number 2 because I think it's enormous. Number 2 is the Supreme Court backloading cases, and 3 of them in particular.
What would you like my opinion on?
On Venezuela, on the whole attack on Venezuela, the idea that now we're defining the United States and we're defining the world in 3 superpowers. We're defining the world in Russia, China, and the U.S., and Venezuela is sort of an essential step in that definition, where now you have China feeling empowered to take over Taiwan, Russia essentially feeling empowered to continue on its course in Ukraine. We're drawing the lines. We're drawing the mechanisms of 3 superpowers.
I feel like it does sort of give that that green light for unlawful actions to go on in other countries as well. I'm just waiting for, I don't know, Canada or somebody to come abduct our president.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I mean, you can only hope. I think that move, I think he has been sort of hinting at that. Like now that I think back on some of the moves that they've made, more specifically, some, movements that they've made and people who have left and stuff like that just recently sort of all pointed to maybe they have been planning this for quite some time, probably before he even took office. That's I mean, I have no proof. That's just my opinion.
So, and then comes the question, is he just the world's biggest crash dummy? Is he just $1 trillion crash dummy? Does he have any,
you're going to make that mistake again? I mean, see, this is what I'm saying. If you underestimate
Is it a mistake,
Trump,
though? That's the question, not the statement.
Well, okay. What I'm saying here is look at the history of how we talk about Trump. Okay, notwithstanding what he's actually done. When he first came down the golden escalator It was the all the adults in the room were laughing. The Clintons were saying, "We hope he's the person that the Republicans put forward," and stuff like that. They were very supportive of him because they that's the person they wanted to run against. Okay, we constantly underestimate this guy, call him a boob, call him an idiot, call him a carnival barker, and interesting enough, he is all those things. But somehow he always does what? Achieve what no one else has achieved. Okay, at what point are you going to stop underestimating him and just take it for what he is? Criticize him truly, but stop acting like he's an idiot. Idiots don't get reelected after they lose an election. Idiots don't make American history. What he has done, idiots can't get elected and have 92 criminal charges against them. I'm sorry, right? He's a lot of
obviously they
things.
can because he's been elected and he is
And reelected.
I am not saying, I'm not saying what he hasn't done. I'm saying to say he's an idiot is to say he's a boob. That right? That's what I'm saying. To underestimate him, right? Because we don't like him, right? Right. That's what I'm saying. How many times do we have to be wrong? No one thought he would have beaten Hillary.
He seems low IQ just based on, I mean, when he got up and talked about the Venezuelan attack, I mean, that
he's completely inarticulate. I agree with that.
Speech. I mean, like he's got smart people around him. Somebody needs to pull him back. Stick to the script, man. Like stick to the script. He sounded like a moron. It's an embarrassment.
You say that, but everything he says goes viral. I mean, right? That's what I'm saying. I mean, seriously, Beth, can you say anything that all of a sudden just goes viral over and over and over again?
Well, he is the president.
The most outrageous things go.
30 years ago, that was the case for him. Oh, what do you mean? He was on. He was on Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous in 1994. What I am trying to say to you here is that we could call him a lot of things, but to underestimate him after all he continues to do is not it doesn't make any sense. How many times do we have to be wrong on this, right? I'm not underestimating him, but I think he's a carnival barker. I think he's a misogynist. Yes, all these criticisms are accurate, but it's not because he's not talented. It's not because he's stupid.
Where's the talent in taking Maduro? Where is the talent in that?
Not talent. No. That's bold. That's borderline.
You think that was strategic?
If not evil? No. Yes. And again, I'm not advocating. What I'm trying to say here is that okay? What is he actually doing? Yeah, Coach was starting it out. In my opinion, this is. He announced it with Rubio on Megyn Kelly the first week of his office, right? Which basically. We have the rules-based order govern the world, international geopolitics from post-World War II all the way through Biden. He is ending that. There is a new regime. The new regime is 3 superpowers. They talk to each other directly. They each have areas of influence. Within their areas of influence, they are dominant. That's it. Right. He is negotiating directly with Putin. He's negotiating directly with Xi. Putin has the green light to continue he will crush, Ukraine, and we will watch it. Right. And guess what? If you're Finland, look out because you're next. No, I don't think it's a good thing. I just think it's true. I don't think it's a good thing.
America's now authoritarian and is headed by a dictator.
We have
Congrats,
no. 77.3 million a person. It's still a democracy. The fact that he got elected in a fair election, okay, so he's not a dictator, and that argument is not helpful. All I'm saying here is again, I'm not rationalizing.
It is truthful, though.
I'm not. No. He got elected. He wasn't put into power by a coup, right? I mean, he got elected.
He lied to get elected, but I mean, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, we are. Let's say.
When's the last president who didn't lie to get elected?
Okay,
because I remember.
we are getting off topic, and we do need to stay on topic. So let's say this: he did get elected. I am proud to be a part of the party that acknowledged his victory in the election, and not the party that cried wolf for 10 years, for 4 years essentially. Let's get on to. Let's talk about.
Agreed.
Let's
He
talk
was
about
graceless in
then
2020.
to
I
say
agree with you.
strategic in Venezuela, to sort of say that in the same sentence, and I'm going to move on to the next topic, but I do want to make this final point. To say strategic in Venezuela in the same sentence, when in fact Maduro said we can make a deal on the drug trafficking out of our country. There's 2 points
It
to that.
wasn't about drug trafficking, and you
It
know
was
it.
not
That's
right. So we're not strategic in any sense. We haven't
what do you
mitigated.
mean? We wanted the oil, and that's what
Okay,
they're doing. I'm not
but
saying
the
it's right,
illusion
but that's what
was
they're doing.
the drug trafficking. Maduro said we could make a deal on drug trafficking, and I'm sure he would have said we could make a deal on oil if you don't come get me. I'm sure he would have conceded to that too. But Trump decided we're going to come get him. This is Marco Rubio's vision. This is Pete Hegseth's vision. This is my vision. We're going to come get him. We're going to look bold. We're going to look decisive. We're going to look strong. We're going to appeal to our neocon diehard base. It was not strategic, though, is all I was alluding to. It's
It is
done.
strategic.
It's. I
What does
might
strategic mean?
Not in the, it's not strategic in the way that he is
alluded to it.
right.
Oh no, well, no. First and foremost, okay, you cannot see what he's doing. You cannot know what he's doing unless you ignore what he's saying. Yes, what he said about Venezuela it was about the drugs. What he's doing in Venezuela is what Rubio announced on Megyn Kelly a week into his office. This is what he's doing. He's enforcing U.S. control within the American area of influence, which
Right,
is
from
a
my end,
signal to Canada. It's a signal to Denmark over Greenland. It's a signal to Western Europe. Yes,
yeah, that we will come in and take anybody
we're
that we
coming and
want.
taking. And guess
We
what? It's a
can't. I
green
mean,
light
when
to
did
Russia to
that
do the
become
same.
acceptable?
No, I'm not saying it's
people did it
acceptable.
to us,
I
we would
agree
lose
with you,
our
Beth.
absolute minds.
Beth, I agree with you. I am not celebrating that. I agree with you. I'm just saying there's a difference. Truth doesn't mean we agree with the truth. The truth is this is what he's doing. That's all I'm saying. I'm not advocating. I'm not saying it's a good thing.
No.
Right? This is a total break in American hit. Well, it's not a total break because America has done this in many ways for a long time. This is a transparent, naked power grab. Yes.
What he did was the very thing he railed against other presidents for doing. He was going to be the different president. He was going to end the forever wars. He was tired of the taking over and being other people's. So he railed against that and then became the very thing he ran against.
No, well, as I said, the
only
way to know what he's going to do
but this doesn't
is to ignore
America.
what he says.
It will benefit Trump.
But Beth, I agree with you. I said it earlier in the broadcast, maybe before you came on, that this is a complete betrayal of the Tulsi Gabbard wing of his coalition. There's no doubt about that. This is a complete betrayal of that. Right. And he doesn't care. Right. So you're absolutely right. I'm not advocating. I'm merely saying, okay, so what does this mean? What does this mean about what he's doing? And what it means is that his priority is that within America's sphere of influence, which is Western Europe and the Western Hemisphere, and I think he's trying to stake some claim in Africa about the attack there, right? Okay, right. Okay, China has Asia, right? And a good deal of the Middle East. Russia has Eastern Europe and the other part of the Middle East, right? This is the new world order, right? And he's giving Russia and China the green light to exercise their control. Look what China is doing around Taiwan right now.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think it is absolutely destructive.
I think it's horrible. I think it's
demented. I will say demented. Yeah. I will use the word demented, but I will also say it is time to move on.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, I was
because I could think of 9 different segues to go with.
I'm with you. Let's put it out there.
No, I was very upset, but okay. Yes, Supreme Court. Yes,
Supreme Court. So President Donald Trump and the Supreme Court smooth relationship could turn sour in the new year. The court 6-3 conservative vote. So let's just say I say 6-3. I say 2 are going to go his way either way, but that still leaves 5. Either way, no matter what, Daniel Alito and Clarence Thomas are going to vote with the president. That does leave 5. Somehow make things happen. The court's 6-3 majority conservative avoided direct conversation with Trump in 2025 while handing him a series of wins. But those wins were temporary. Now we're on to real decisions. Now we are on to real decisions on 3 important topics. And those 3 topics, as I wanna summarize, is the sweeping tariffs, the attempt to fire the Federal Reserve's powerful board of governors, one in particular, but the fact of the matter is, can the president fire a person on the powerful board of governors at the Federal Reserve? And then the other is birthright citizenship, which opens up a Pandora's box of citizenship in general. So now the experts are predicting he's going to lose one of them. No expert is going to predict he's going to lose all 3. I'll go on a limb and say he's probably going to lose all 3, but no expert, no designated constitutional expert is going to say that and then eat their words for the rest of their life. If he even, and then there's always the question of, my guess is Chief Justice John Roberts is going to write all three opinions. He's middle of the road at best, and anybody can perceive a loss as a win when you write the ruling in such a way that basically gives him a little wiggle room. So let's get into that. What do we think about these 3 rulings? What do we think about these 3 questions? And the questions are,
I agree with you, Truby. I think to some degree it's going to be all 3. I think, but again, I also think the Supreme Court can always surprise us and what level they'll go against their own stated principles. So you start with birthright citizenship. I want to believe that even they would not be so hypocritical as to claim to be originalists and even consider that. Then again, they could surprise us. When it comes to the Fed, I think there's enough self-interest there. They realize like how much that could just crater the fucking economy. If he's given that much power, any president have that much power with the Fed and try to swing things based on their desire for short-term goals and popularity. So I think out of self-interest, they'll find a way to mostly curtail that. And then with tariffs, I think that's going to be the most complicated one, because I think while they're going to make some effort to give Congress some more legitimate power over the purse, they have to find a way to do it without leaving it just hanging there, where we have to figure out what we're going to do with all this money that's already been taken in. Where does it go? Where does it go back to? You know, who is made whole, and what does being made even whole would even mean in this circumstance? So that one, I think, we'll call it like a half win. But I agree with you. I think if I had to guess, I think it would go in that direction.
Okay, if I could step in there, great job, Charlie, and I appreciate you hitting all 3 issues. So I will also try to hit all 3 issues as concisely as Charlie. On the issue of the tariffs, in my opinion, the way I think that the court is going to rule is I don't think they're going to try to go retroactive, and I think the way they get there is differentiating the limits on presidential authority, and how they draw the line is that Trump, that it is unconstitutional for the president to use emergency authority to make a permanent tariff, right? To make permanent policy with the tariffs. The permanent responsibility is the Congress, and I think that's what he'll do. What that does allow him is that, because none of these tariffs have been imposed in a permanent way, that this is how it's always going to be, right? And so he's using temporary, they will uphold his ability to use temporary authority, to use emergency authority as a basis for imposing temporary tariffs, right? Which is what it will be perceived retroactively. Okay. But moving forward, they will strike down his ability to impose permanent tariffs, which is essential if he's trying to get these multinational corporations to spend the trillions of dollars it would take or the billions of dollars it would take, hundreds of billions of dollars, to move manufacturing back to the states within the tariff regime. So therefore, that's how I think they'll split it. They will strike down his ability to make permanent tariffs. That's the Congress's authority. On the issue of the Federal Reserve, this is a separate separations of power issue. The Congress, there is a standing federal legislation that established the Federal Reserve, right? That a president endorsed. And so it's law, right? And so the capacity of that legislation does not empower the executive, right, to influence the Federal Reserve in the way that Trump is trying to do. And I think on the basis of separations of power and standing federal legislation, I think they will strike down his ability to remove. There are impeachment powers that the Congress, again, separations of power has to remove governors of the Federal Reserve. Those were not respected here. The president doesn't have the authority. I think they strike that ability down on separations of power, right? As gently as they can, but at the end of the day, they strike it down. On the third issue, and what was the third Supreme Court
So
issue?
there was the tariffs, there was his ability to fire the Federal Reserve, a permanent member of the Federal Reserve governors.
Yes.
And then there was the birthright citizenship.
Birthright citizenship. Exactly. Okay. Once again, this is black letter law, settled law in the U.S. Constitution, right? In terms of birthright citizenship, right? There is right the court. If there was a issue in dispute that the court wanted to reinterpret the Constitution, this is how the Constitution has been modified in terms of what it means. And that's the tension between the original interpretation of the Constitution and the Constitution as a living document, right? Never in U.S. history has the U.S. president been able to redefine the Constitution based on their interpretation of it. I don't think the court is about to recognize that here. That's what this would do. In order to recognize the president's claim, challenge to birthright citizenship. No, I don't think the issue in dispute warrants the court to reconsider that black letter law, straight out of the Constitution, settled law position, right? And so therefore, yeah, he's going to lose all three of these. The timing of it I find fascinating because this court is political. This court recognizes they're dealing with a president who is unabashed at his willingness to exercise power. And so the court understands, based on the history of the Supreme Court, that in a direct confrontation with either Congress or the president, the court is at its weakest. So I do think that there's something to what you're saying about them timing this to the extent that he's a lame duck. What I would suggest to the court is that will not matter. The fact that he's a lame duck means he does not have to be responsible to the American people or the court, right? He could just do what he's going to do. So in other words, when they strike down his rights in all three of these cases, he will lose all three of these cases. I will bet my bottom dollar that he loses all three of these cases, right? They will soften the blow as best that they can. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether they announced it in 2 weeks or 8 months at the end of the next session and stuff like that. He will respond how he's going to respond. In my honest opinion, I think the birthright citizenship issue is not a do or die issue for him. It's just one of those issues, right? Another one of those things that we're chasing our tail over. I think the tariff issue is huge. And I think his solution is to go to the Congress. Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, pass it in the Senate, the right for him to impose the tariffs, on people who buy Russian oil, get them to agree that he has the discretionary authority, and then strong arm the House representatives to make sure every Republican in the House votes for that, so that he has the authority he needs to execute his major agenda on forcing U.S. multinational corporations to bring manufacturing back to within our zone of influence. How about that? And so that's my opinion of how all three of those cases go. It's going to be 0 for 3. And if he throws the tantrum, there's nothing Roberts can do about it because timing is not going to matter.
Okay, Beth, because
well, I think trying to decide whether or not they're going to go or side with him or not is really, it's tricky because in, I forget what year it was, but when they overturned Roe versus Wade, honest to God, I never ever thought that would happen. That was sort of like, that was almost like biblical. So when we're talking about these, specifically birthright citizenship, I'm afraid, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, that there's a good chance any birthright or any of them can be overturned. Like, this president seems to be untouchable. And as far as the tariffs are concerned, I really have no idea, but that would almost give the president, like, full reign to do whatever he wants with trade, and we would just get rid of the Congress. We don't need, we wouldn't need them anymore if he could just make all the decisions. And as far as the one that I think that they'll go with, they'll pass, or Trump they'll side with Trump on the most, is firing the head Fed chair. I forget his name.
The governor, the Fed governor. They have a group of governors.
What's his name?
A regional governor. It was a woman.
Yes.
It was a woman, and it was I believe it was a black woman.
I thought he already did
woman.
fire her.
Yeah, he did. So
but she was reinstated, I believe.
Oh, okay.
The federal district court? Yeah. So
I think she was reinstated, and so the discussion goes on, and so she continues to fight.
I think that is the one that I really don't doubt that they're gonna. I think they're gonna side with him on that one. But the birthright, I think it's I would hate to. It's just so. If they side with Trump on that, I mean, that's just horrific. I mean, we're talking about a whole new. But then again, I don't recognize America today, so who knows?
So
I hear you, Beth. Let me ask Charlie a question, Coach. Charlie, okay, on to Beth's point on the birthright citizenship issue. I would like to, in terms of my legal education, I know you have a legal education, say that the difference between Roe and the issue of birthright citizenship is black letter constitutional. Okay, in that Roe arose out of the living document interpretation of the U.S. Constitution, and not the original interpretation, not the black letter, right? And that makes those cases that come out of the living document interpretation less constitutional sturdy. In other words, more subject to having a different living document interpretation.
Well, that's why I was not as surprised as Beth was that they overturned Roe. I mean, a little bit, but it just showed their willingness. It showed their willingness to overturn precedent, not go completely away from originalist theory. Now, they have shown their ability to go pretty far from a lot of their, originalist doctrine when it's convenient for them. I just think this is a bridge too far. I mean, it's so clear in the Constitution. Yes. Now, to be honest, if they really wanted to go through a process, of amending, of an amendment, I think through a long process, there would be an opportunity for there to be some change. I think there's enough people who feel it's abused enough but again, I don't think
there's a process.
So many things. Right. I don't see that happening. But I think if given a fair shot, I could see it being amended in some way. But I certainly don't see the Supreme Court, like I said, going so far from being textualist to be like to allow him to just change that, by whim or
by whim. I mean, that's the thing. So Beth, just as a security, I mean, yes, if you want an example of the radicalization of the Supreme Court, if they change birthright citizenship on the basis of the presidential action, when there is procedures to modify the Constitution, where Congress has an authority to give guidance on this, where the court itself has the ability to reinterpret the Constitution if an appropriate conflict issue is brought to them, right? To actually add a new wrinkle, which is to say that the president on their interpretation alone could rewrite the Constitution. It would be the most radical shift in nothing they've done so far. And I'm not saying they won't do it, but that's where the last refuge of my confidence in this court lies, is that they have not demonstrated a complete decoupling
I guess the only
from,
reason I say
from
I am questioning that is because I really I thought, there were certain things in America that was a bridge too far. There were certain things for the Supreme Court that was a bridge too far. And with this administration specifically, I just feel like I'm just stunned. Nothing shocks me. Nothing, I mean, uh, I'm still in awe that he's gotten away with so much already. I'm afraid to to say no, they won't do it because then you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
I hear
just
you.
it's so far out.
The difference really between that and Roe is that as much as I completely was against what they did and completely against the idea of taking away that right, the argument for it was actually pretty good. The legal argument for this idea that they kind of created this constitutional right to privacy
Yes.
through years of litigation and things like that. Like I understood, like it was a good legal argument, one that I completely disagreed with, but it was a good argument. I haven't seen anything that even you could
Yes.
seriously is a good
Approaches.
argument for not for not having birthright citizenship. There actually is good arguments for how that's being abused, but a good argument of how you could just change that without a constitutional amendment. And like that's
Yeah.
just now we're not even pretending to be following the Constitution anymore. We're just completely just ignoring it and saying, the executive has, yeah, he's a king. He can do it. If he doesn't like it, whatever, he can just change it. I don't think all of them are that far. I will say, I think two of them are. I think,
I do too, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, they definitely are. You're right, Charlie.
I think
Two
they
of
do
them.
it second.
Yeah,
But I
they're
don't.
insane.
But I don't think they'll do it in the opinion. I think knowing that it's going to lose, I don't think even they want to put their name on that. I don't think there'll be a big dissent. I really don't. I think that one will go by pretty quietly. I also think with Trump with immigration, I think if he had his dithers, like closing the border has worked exceptionally well for him. I mean, to me, that's the only accomplishment I would say I would give him is that he did secure the border, and I think that's a good thing. This removing people, this lie that it was going to be all about criminals, and the ugliness of moving. I think the latest one, that poor young woman who was going to visit her family in college, and they snatched her up and everything. And knowing that there's no way they're going to achieve the numbers that they said they were going to achieve in terms of getting people out of the country, I think he'd be happy just to walk away from it and say, well, I secured the border and, we'll keep going after criminals. But he's got too many people in place now who that's not their agenda anymore. They really want to just drag every single person who's not here legally.
Yep.
I think it's out of his control. But I think, like I said, if he did this, he'd rather be like, well, I'll walk away from that. I mean, look at what he's doing internationally. He wants to just do things. He wants to be able to do things and put his name on it. And that's why I think there is a chance that he does walk farther and farther away from the group of MAGA that got him elected and closer to a neocon thing. If for no other reason, is he can get those things done. International stuff is much easier, he's seeing now, than anything domestically. And he just wants to get shit done and with his name on it. And so I think, he's seeing more and more like this. He's seeing, wait, I can do this. I can just go into a sovereign country, snatch their leader out, and no one can really do anything about it. And I can beat my chest and be happy about it. Well, fuck. It's going to take that all day long.
Yeah. So let me make a clear distinction here. The only self-proclaimed textualist, the only self-proclaimed originalist on the Supreme Court today is Judge Gorsuch. Just like the only self-proclaimed socialist is Bernie Sanders. So as far as the court being political, they are extremely political. So you got two that are extremely right, you got three that are extremely left, and three that'll just do whatever, two, three, four, it'll just do whatever the hell the wind blows. As far as textualist, the reality is on Roe versus Wade, the states are able to regulate abortion now. That was a little different. There are no kings in America. As far as birthright citizenship, I am hopeful nothing changes there. I don't know how the opinion will be written, but I am assuming he will lose that argument. Like Charlie said, I've already heard comments from the administration that they have secured the border, that they have removed all the illegals. I heard some sort of statement from the White House recently that they've removed X amount of millions of illegals and they've secured the border. And they essentially have, it's not my opinion. Biden had a responsibility to stop the flow of illegals. There was a reason for checks and balances and people coming in. Biden didn't do it. He was afraid to offend his progressive support. Trump did cut off that at the pass. Give him that credit for his one accomplishment. Like Charlie said, the best thing at this point for Trump to do is move on to other arguments that secure his legacy and enable him to do more of what the neocons want him to do. What Beth said was incredible is, and it's my question for my distrust of the Democratic Party, does possible President-elect Governor Gavin Newsom really want to be hamstrung by the Congress? Do they want President Trump to succeed in some way? To the powers he has been able to secure for the presidency, are Democrats just as excited about having those powers? Are Democrats
Coach,
just as excited
They
about being
should
able
be.
to?
Coach, before we move over onto the political questions, because that's a great topic, I just want to make one comment to what Charlie was saying in terms of looking at the Supreme Court and how the court thinks and the various cases, particularly as it relates to Roe. I think it's important, particularly Beth, for supporters of Roe, because like part of your contention is that there are certain principles you thought were protected, sacrosanct, and Roe was one of them. And I just want you to know that going to what Charlie was saying, that the arguments that unwound Roe were strengthened by the fact that if you go back to the history of how Roe was decided, right? The
Well, yes,
conservatives, the
when he
conservatives
when he
on the
brought up the point that it wasn't a constitution, yeah, it hits
yeah,
different
yeah.
when you say
It,
that.
but it's also something that's important for us to recognize that conservatives actually scuttled Roe in the first place. The original vote for Roe was 6-3, and the liberals on the court at the time in 72, led by William O. Douglas and John Brennan, and okay, were would have written the majority, would have written the decision for Roe. But Chief Justice Berger decided to join the majority once he saw he lost the decision in Roe. And that, as Chief Justice, gave him the authority to decide who writes the opinion. And he chose the only conservative in the majority, Harry Blackmun. Okay. And so Blackmun set up the trimester structure. Had Brennan, because William O. Douglas would have likely chosen William Brennan, had written it, the constitutional clarity that if the liberals got to write Roe would have strengthened their argument when it was challenged ultimately, 50 something years later. And so what I'm trying to say is conservatives have been scuttling this decision from the beginning. They are the ones who wrote the whole legal structure that progressives and women's rights advocates have been forced to accept as their basis of protecting their right to privacy, when it should have been true believers on the court like Brennan, right? To write the decision. And so I just wanted you to know, I don't know if you knew that there's a lot written about the
No,
history of how Roe was decided.
I didn't read the I didn't read the entire opinion. I just, it's what you heard on podcasts or stuff like that. But no, when Charlie said, it wasn't, it was a it was a legal case. It wasn't a constitutional amendment. He's absolutely right. It does hit much different when you say it that way. It's just, it was such a political hot topic that I was just really stunned that they overturned it, seeing as, that you almost took it as a given. Yeah.
And it was a long game they played. It was, they basically
a long game.
From what Kevin was saying, like it was a long game that was started with the decision by allowing a conservative to write the opinion. They set up the structure. It shows an amazing amount of resilience and patience that we just don't normally see in this country. That, they slowly built it up through the lower courts and through the establishment of these, these conservative think tanks and influence, and always with a long-term game plan that was like basically they knew they had it won when they got Alito on the bench, and then it just took. So while we all thought it was just a given that this would always be a right, they were slowly chipping away at that for decades. So it's reasonable that that you would feel the way you would, because we all did, right? I mean, certainly I did. I had no idea this before I went to law school. Now I see it differently. I'm like, oh yeah, I see what they did there. But it was so ingrained to us. It was just a right that we accepted that we'd always have. And I wish it worked. I wish it still worked. And who knows, maybe that will change, but no time in the near future.
Well, that has just served as an incredible source of clarification. That's why you're watching this podcast. That was incredible, that when we just had this conversation, and the clarity there is just like Charlie said, a 50-year long game. And ultimately, whether you like the decision or not, we are living with the decision. But when you like the decision or not, when you hear about how it all came about, it's like Charlie said, the fact that we literally had this diligence, that we literally had this dedication to coming to this opinion for 50 years, and we're there now. And the problem, again, there's this fascination with Donald Trump and giving him either the credit or the criticism for making it happen. It's not him that made it happen. It's just not. He's not that significant in our life. He's really just not. He has made himself that significant in our life. I have argued this point over and over again. The No Kings rally had nothing to do with him. But by calling it a No Kings rally, the nomenclature in and of itself made it all about him. It was about government overreach. It was about government abuse. It was about government corruption. But the fact that we decided he's the king and we don't want a king and we'll call it the No Kings rally made the whole thing pointless. And we've just made him too significant in our lives. It's not the fact that he nominated 3 justices to the Supreme Court, because the 2 he didn't nominate are the only ones that typically work in his favor. But generally speaking, Amy Coney Barrett said it best when an interviewer asked her, what if Donald Trump called you? She would say, I assumed he got the wrong number. She doesn't want nothing to do with the guy. So we make this habit of making him the most significant thing in our daily life. And I just keep saying all he really is, and I know I was kind of pushed back on it, is everybody's crash dummy. Will President-elect Gavin Newsom enjoy the new powers that President Trump put in place? And I think he will. And I think he's looking forward to being able to fire governors on the Federal Reserve Board. But I want to get on to the next topic because it's just as important as the first 2. And the next topic is Marjorie Taylor Greene's discussion with maybe her supporters or all Americans to just stop paying taxes. Don't pay taxes. And are we ever going to get to
I love that idea.
But what about fair taxation? Because you don't pay the tax. I mean, I love the idea that we love the idea, but the IRS is going to come get you. The penalties, the fact that it's going to follow you the rest of your life. I mean, you're literally going to be like the guy on Sanford and Son, the actor, that they literally went to a restaurant and took his watch and his money out of his wallet. I mean, they are that aggressive in pursuing the money you owe them. Is that the right step, or can we finally talk about fair taxation? The fact that Apple has Berkshire Hathaway has $350 billion in cash reserves now, and a record amount. I like to talk about Warren Buffett here and there. He talked about paying $5 billion in taxes last year, writing the IRS a check for $5 billion. If only 800 companies were to do just that, none of us would have to pay any more taxes. Can we get to that point where 800 companies do just that without breaking the law?
Not with the current administration.
But will we get to that point with Democrats?
I don't think I understand the question. What were you saying about the 800 companies?
Will we ever get up to a point where we can
tax Warren Buffett said
so much that we won't have to the middle class and lower class won't pay taxes?
Right. So Warren Buffett said his company, Berkshire Hathaway, wrote the IRS a check for $5 billion. And then he said that if only 800 other larger companies like his did the same thing, 800 companies wrote a check, paid their fair share of taxes, none of us would have to pay any other tax, any other income tax, any other federal tax.
You know what I think is going to influence this? I really do. Now, again, this is a long game. I'm not saying this is going to happen 5 years, maybe not even 10 years, but not far after that. And I was listening to Elon Musk talk about this, and I kind of agreed that because of AI, if it keeps going in the direction it's going, we are going to get to a point of universal basic income is going to be required. Because people are not going to be able to there's not going to be enough jobs. And businesses, as long as we're in a free market system, businesses are always going to do what's best for the bottom line. And the more and more that AI displacing human beings is going to do that. As long as we're, in a capitalist society, that's the direction it's going to go. And we're still going to have to feed people and house people, and there still has to be a movement of the currency. And I think long term, and this will certainly affect how we deal with taxation, is that if there's going to be some type of basic income for people. It's going to have to be provided by the government.
A convergence of what Charlie just said and your question about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Coach, right, in terms of her tax revolt. I just want to put on the table, because everyone on this phone grew up here in the States, right? I'm sorry. Americans are not going to accept that they cannot use their talents and their ingenuity to generate sufficient income to take care of themselves and their family, and in lieu of that, accept a handout from on top of the hill where all the money seems to be residing, right? Americans are not going to stand for that, right? And I'm just saying, what Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing is a part of the unwinding of this old paradigm, right? Because capitalism has run so deep into the red, it is not functioning the way it made it successful in the first place. Let us never forget the reason why capitalism is the best economic system we've ever had is because the average person had the opportunity to use their talents, ingenuity, to raise themselves from poverty to wealth. Horatio Alger, this is the American story. That image of capitalism is dead. Okay, right. Most Americans do not see that and do not feel that way. And it's because we're letting private ownership of innovation consolidate in wealthier and fewer hands. And so the benefit of AI is going to the owners of AI. Now, look, if that's going to put people out of work, and it is, and create the welfare state, universal UBI, I don't know the Americans you all know who would say I can accept living in America where I get a $10,000 UBI check every month so that I can live in a nice house or whatever, but I don't have to do anything for it as a utopian version of America. No, I'm telling you, people are not going down that way. And we have a country with more weapons than guns.
In what way are they going to challenge it? Because I'm not talking about one day they're going to decide this is the way things are going to be. It's going to chip away little by little as it's. They're already not doing anything about it. AI is serving its creators completely. So what are people doing to challenge that? Any attempt even to
Charlie, all we have to do is look at history. The revolution occurs. Very few people see it coming, right? And what I'm saying is, if you look on the ground in America today, where in 2020, at the end of 2020, coming out of COVID, right? The U.S. Housing Survey said 12% of American households had food insecurity. And then in the 4 years, 2021 to 2025, after COVID and stuff like that, you had housing affordability blow up in the United States to the point where the average middle class family cannot afford to buy a house in the average American city. And because they can't afford to buy a house in the average American city, they're running up rents to the point where the working class is spending over 50% of their take-home pay on rent. And therefore, they're not buying the food that they normally would buy. So you could be rest assured a food insecurity is in the 20s, if not beyond, in America. Right. Okay. Yeah. We are on the edge of losing social order in this country. And the problem with, and why, how do you defend against that is all the security forces, the military, the National Guard, the law enforcement. These are all working class, lower middle class people. And if the reason why people are in the street and are armed is because they can't take care of themselves and their family, They are not going to be used to bust the heads of their friends and neighbors and other family members who are in the same socioeconomic class because they can't take care of themselves. They're not hooligans. We're denying people the opportunity to feel any sense of sovereignty, any sense of agency, to be able to right. And they're not going down that way. So yeah, we're all it starts. It's a spark. Where will that start? In Arkansas somewhere, maybe in Seattle, whatever. If we don't pay attention, that we're on the edge here, because Americans have felt entitled to be able to take care of themselves and their families. We have played this tape before, and it was Germany in the 1920s, right? Because the Germans are as proud as we are, and their history is as rich as ours is, right? In Europe, and when they were wheeling up wheelbarrows of Deutschmarks in order to get a loaf of bread, and they still couldn't take care of themselves and their families, yeah, eventually it broke, and it's breaking now. Right,
So let
right.
me
And
make
so
that.
I don't think UBI is the solution because I don't think Americans are going to accept that.
I
I
don't
don't
The
think
think
system
Americans
is
will.
I
broken.
don't want to call it a solution. I'm not saying it's a solution. I'm saying it'll get to the point it'll be a requirement. And I understand. I just don't see, like I said, obviously they're not resisting right now in any
Because
in
we're,
any, in
we're
any
at the
legitimate
edge.
way. So what would that resistance even look like? Because people aren't really fully understanding why it's happening. Most people aren't, and all they know is that there's less jobs.
They know there's less jobs. They
What
know
would
that the jobs are paying
what
less.
would their rallying cry be?
Well, here, let me tell you. Let me tell you what I think. Everybody made a great point. The rise of Nazis came from inflation. The rise in power from the Nazis in Germany were able to rise to power from the reason being inflation. So my question was, when we get back to the growing chasm between rich and poor, the rules of taxation have created that growing chasm, right? So let's just say like and let's just not blame it on Trump's $4 trillion tax cut recently. Let's not blame it on his first $1.5 trillion tax cut in his first run in office. President Obama, on his watch, there was a thing called tax extenders. It was a series of tax breaks, a series of tax loopholes that were always temporary and always needed Congress to vote on them to to extend them another year. And they said that's why they called them tax extenders. Those enormous tax loopholes I think it was Mitt Romney came to President Obama and said we need to make them permanent because corporate America is complaining we just can't plan the future on temporary tax breaks. Made them permanent. Over and over and over and over again, we've seen the tax laws favor the very wealthy, the very powerful, the very big corporations. And over and over and over and over again, we've seen the middle class get taxed. You can say a steak costs $12 versus $8 today. Yes, it does. But the fact of the matter is, when your paycheck is constantly reduced by the amount of taxes you're being charged, that's what's making the steak unaffordable more than inflation. In America, we've got a fair tax policy problem. And we just keep whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they play the game. If you don't vote for this permanent tax loop, if you don't vote for this temporary tax loophole to be permanent, I will spend $50 million on your opponent running against you who will vote for it. How do we get past all that? How do we get to a point where government is working for us again?
Well, one thing we could do, but we won't, and we're trying to is try to get money out of politics, right? I mean, if you could actually make a stance for that, and they really could, and certainly Congress could if they wanted to, but they won't. But that would be this, just based on the point you were making about, going against these people by financing an opponent, by primarying. I mean, that's the weapon that they yield all the time now. If you could take money out of politics, like many other countries have, that would be a big step in that direction. And a lot of people talk about wanting it, when there's a microphone, but in the backroom deals, they all benefit from it. I mean, that's the whole job, right? That's the whole job of being in Congress and Senate. You spend almost all your time fundraising. That's basically what they do.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, this is why I contend that the system is broken. I mean, it just hasn't died yet, but it's in the process. I mean, you have American electorates. Look at the trend in voting. There are, I mean, 150 million people voted last year, right? In 2020, I mean, look at the spike in voting. It's not that Americans are not participating in the process. The problem is that we've had election cycle after election cycle after election cycle where the people that are get elected turn around and betray the very people who voted for them. Why? Because they're not working for the people who voted for them. They're working for extreme wealth, right? Both sides. And so, in my opinion, Trump, this is why I feel like we're on the edge, because Trump got elected on the basis that he was different, that he was the anti-establishment. And I've made the argument that notwithstanding the fact that he's a billionaire, and that's questionable, I agree, right? He is not representing the billionaires. The billionaires hate him. Why? Because in the 90s, Trump did successfully brand himself as the face of the billionaires of wealth, right? And they have contempt for the brand that he established. He is a carnival barker. He is the worst example of what wealth looks like, right? So they don't respect him. None of the billionaires that we know think Trump is smart, is a part of the club, that he represents that. No, there is contempt between these two groups. And Trump wrapped himself with the Americans who were betrayed by them to take power.
If we can agree that they don't.
If this doesn't work, if Trump betrays the people that voted for him after they trusted Obama, after they trusted George W. Bush, after they trusted Bill Clinton, after they trusted Joe Biden in 2020 and got betrayed again, I'm telling you, we're at the end.
Where people are going, what do you mean? He already has.
Oh, you're right. This is the problem with Venezuela. This is the problem with Venezuela this is the start of true betrayal of his own electorate. This is betrayal of Tulsi Gabbard. Right?
Well, the 2017 tax Cuts and Jobs Act, when he put it in as a double deduction, he raised the standard deduction so that everyone thought, we got it, it's double. All that really did was make it so that the middle class couldn't itemize their deductions. Therefore, to get to that standard, so that to benefit from the small amount of loopholes that middle class people had. And what he did was he dropped the corporate tax rate substantially. It was like 32% to 21%, or I forget, but yeah, it's similar.
It's amazing. Yes, I agree.
He made those permanent, but all of the child tax credit, earned income tax, those
temporary.
Temporary. Yes, temporary. So if people knew, like, you think with all these tax cuts that just came in, that you would see a huge refund this year. It's not. You're not. That overtime, no tax on overtime. Just looking into that, there are so many little loopholes just to even get the deduction for that. And it has to be because the federal minimum to be eligible to get that, I think it's like 36,000. So if you make more than that, but federally, they don't have to actually pay you overtime. So if you don't fit into this little category where a very small percentage of people fit into, you don't get that deduction on Social Security, no tax on Social Security, all these things. They make it, if you actually read the bill, they made it so hard to actually qualify for that deduction or credit that most people won't qualify. Yeah. So all it did was, again, help those billionaires that know that Trump is not the brightest. He's not in their club, but they'll stand on his stage while he's, being inaugurated.
It's funny. It reminds me of this thing they roll out within my own office right here in Miami, where housing prices, rent is so expensive. So they have this thing where they work out these deals with these local apartment communities, where if you qualify, you can get it's not even that substantial, but you get a somewhat reduced rate. But the way it's written is that the area between making too little and making too much, when you calculate all together, it's like a $5,000 window of like anyone who actually fits in that little group that doesn't, makes little enough to qualify, but doesn't make too much to go over the edge. It's ridiculous. It's basically designed so no one really takes advantage of it. And I think that's similar to what you're saying and what we do with these tax loopholes. And it's all imaginary carrots.
It's everything we do. And that's the problem is, how do we change that? How do we get real government officials? How do we get a real understanding of what they're doing next? Because all they're doing is, again, creating that growing divide, the growing chasm between rich and poor. They're making it wider and wider and wider. And there's other aspects of it. It's like you said, AI is a labor killer. But that wasn't always. Websites is a labor killer. You used to call a company and a person would answer the phone and, what's your son's name? What's your child's name? What's your wife's name? And do all this typing in for you. Now you're doing it yourself for free. They're not even paying labor. I mean, websites was a labor killer. AI is nothing new as far as killing jobs. The toll booths. I had a friend that had a state job with the toll booths. And the toll booth's gone. The only thing that's still there is the tunnel because they didn't dig the road out to dig a tunnel out, but it's all automatic now. So she no longer goes and picks up every cashier's drawer and counts it out. That job's gone, and everybody taking those tolls jobs are gone because now everything's either a toll by plate or a toll by e-pass. All those jobs are gone. So
going back to your overall point, the only way I see we could fix that would be to get money completely out of politics. So,
Right.
you really back at like Citizens, really, like Citizens United, I mean, that basically spelled the doom, the end for any opportunity for us to actually elect officials that truly represent the people. That's the only solution. It's the only, it's funny. I have a friend who's running for a congressional seat, a U.S. congressional seat here in Miami. Great guy. Absolutely adore him. I supported him early on in his campaign. I felt so bad for the guy every time he has to make a phone call. Like I can hear it in his voice. It pains him that he can't just call and talk to me about issues and what I can do to help him with the issues and organization. And it always has to start off about money. And it makes me, I'm like, I could never do it. I could for that reason alone, I could never be involved in politics at that level because, it's just that. It's just money, money, money.
Money. So when you say Citizens United, it's the most fascinating Supreme Court ruling ever because the President Obama, in a State of the Union address, not just in passing in a press conference, mentioned Citizens United. And Supreme Court Justice Daniel Alito, because President Obama was mentioning it in a condescending tone, Supreme Court Justice Daniel Alito either mouthed the words bullshit or not true, and the cameras were on him. Now here's my question: not Daniel Alito's reaction, not President Obama's not President Obama's comments. How much is President Obama's hand on the bludgeon sword of Citizens United? How much money has he benefited from that ruling? How many corporations forged TV commercials that cost a fortune in favor of President Obama? They all talk a big game. And when we fixate on Donald Trump, we need to realize they're all just as dirty. They're all just as into dark money, Citizens United money. Primarying was a term we now use frequently because Donald Trump said, I have a secret weapon. My secret weapon is Elon Musk. He's got $400 billion. He's going to primary anybody any politician that pisses me off. Well, primary's been going on long before Elon Musk. There's been corporate America saying, if you vote against this, you're done. Or if you vote for it, you got 20 million in your coffers. So how do we get money out of politics? I just had a whole podcast with a dark money guy, and it was a fascinating conversation. There was some great suggestions. He calls his book Positive Politics, and I will mention it. I don't have the notes here right now, but it's about how individuals can take up certain movements and make them happen without running for office. Because like you said about your friend, when I ran for office, I made it clear I don't raise money, I raise awareness. Everybody thought I was an idiot. Everybody thought I was just too naive to be even in the game. So I said, you know what, you're right. I back out. I'm going to start a podcast and raise awareness. And that's how this all came about.
Well, the reason why I continue to say, not because I'm a fatalist, that wealth broke it, is because by flooding the zone of media and therefore converting the news from a public service like it was when Walter Cronkite was the number one trusted voice in America to for-profit entities, and all of a sudden the anchor became a millionaire, right? By flooding the zone on the university campuses where where they do research and development. They take the best and the brightest professors out of the classrooms to do research and development because that's where they're going to make far more money, leaving the teaching to the TAs who don't teach critical thinking in the same way that used to produce the challenges that came out of the university system in the 60s and 70s, right? Okay, to doing this in the government to where while we use the long game, as Charlie referred to, of Roe v. Wade, while we're packing the court with pro-business interpretations that recognize corporations as people, and then ultimately recognize them as super people who can donate unlimited amounts of money while we're still restricted to $6,000 a year, right? Okay, wealth has bought all these institutions, right? And so they own it. They own it. And so how do, unless wealth wants to change that process, and they didn't do it by accident. They did it because when the working class and the middle class of this country could, did not were not dependent on, they had enough time. They held wealth and power accountable. This is what was happening in the 60s and the 70s. Civil rights movement, equal rights movement, right? Anti-war movement, a working class media bringing down a sitting president. Okay. Wealth has said shared prosperity was too expensive because we couldn't control the American people. So they broke the back of shared prosperity. Look at us today. So desperate, chasing our tails. A media that tells us the story to hate the other people who are suffering too, right? Yeah, they broke it. We can't get money out of politics because all the politicians are owned, right? And so what we need to do is we need to work to rebuild it. It is broken. And what I'm saying to you here is this may be the last electorate to say, okay, we cannot get redress through our government anymore. And this is where the forefathers' wisdom comes in, because that's where the revolution starts. If you cannot get redress through using your vote, then you do redress by going into the street.
Well,
right?
there is a test balloon out there right now. It's Mamdani,
Yeah,
right? Mamdani's going to be the test balloon.
yeah. Well,
If
yes.
he,
Look about that.
if he can deliver on what he said without becoming corrupt, I mean, that's not going to solve problem itself, but just seeing if that can happen in one of the richest cities in the world,
That's
that would be a glimmer of
Mandani,
hope.
right?
Yeah,
Mamdani. Yeah. Well, hey, Charlie, take a look at Michelle Wu up in Boston, right?
Yeah.
Because Michelle Wu got elected in 2021.
Yeah.
And she's so popular in Boston after her first administration that in a major American city, she ran uncontested. Right. I mean, that's how popular. Check out Katie Wilson in Seattle. Did you talk about a warrior? This is the person, a legend in Seattle, who organized public transit riders into a union and forced the city of Seattle and their public transit system to compromise on routes, on the availability of routes, on fees, on all types of things. Oh yeah, she just got elected mayor of Seattle. Now this is the energy of the Democratic Party. So when when you talk about Gavin Newsom, no,
Yeah.
dead on arrival. It's Mamdani. It's Michelle Wu in Boston.
I absolutely hope so, because the least person I'm actually at all thrilled with is Gavin Newsom, and he's either second, and Andrew Ocasio-Cortez is first. I give Mandami
that's
credit
old party. That's
I
old
give
party.
him credit for winning. I got to see how he delivers,
Well,
because
if Hogle gives him any room to do this, like,
they're going to try to cause him to fail. Of course.
Can he get Albany to cooperate with even half of what he wants to do.
Right. That was my question. Can he get half done? Can he get 25% done? Because it's like you said, if we get that 25%, we're actually doing the Roe versus Wade thing. 50 years later, we've diligently chipped away at the not that I'm in favor of what happened, but understanding what happened today on this podcast, and it took 50 years. We need to start somewhere because we are going further and further in the wrong direction, and at the fastest rate ever seen before now.
I agree. This is why we have to come to the aid of the few who break through. I have put in, and I am working with the transition team for Katie Wilson in Seattle, right? Because she needs the talent to surround her right now. She needs to be effective. She needs actual wins. Man, Donnie needs it. If I was in New York, I would be going to work for him, right? My point is that this is where change can actually occur. Right? Because the entire establishment opposed those three candidates for mayor, right? And they lost. Okay, this is our opportunity. If we don't support them now, because the establishment is against them, is trying to smother them, will try to smother Mandami in the. And I don't advocate for everything he stands for, but he is advocating for working people and change and redirecting resource back to the American people who have been abandoned for the last 32 years. We need to support them now, because that's what I'm saying. In the absence of this of system collapse, this is actually a way for us to put our energies in it now. And so that's what I'm putting my time, my effort. I'm supporting Katie Wilson because I'm in Washington State and I'm going up to Seattle. Anything I can do to help her succeed, because if she could succeed in Seattle, here comes San Diego, here comes San Francisco, other states. If Mandami can be successful, if Michelle Wu can be, all of a sudden we're in Providence and in Portland, Maine. All I'm saying is this is how we would do it. This is how it's going to work.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Beth, Charlie, Kevin, I know, mention your book because it was a great book. I still refer to it all the time. And let's wrap it up for today because we have a lot more to talk about. And I'm going to stick to this sort of format of 3 topics. So,
love the conversation today, Coach. Charlie, Beth, love you guys. This was great. Yeah, my book is On With It Last, the 2024 presidential election edition. I am one of those betrayed Trump voters and stuff like that. But and my broadcast
one of the
is
many.
One of the many, and the podcast is Breadcrumbs, a podcast for people who know it's not working. Come check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Patreon, and support the Political No Brainer podcast. And what's the new name for the new wing of the podcast?
The chair across the aisle, so we don't cover politics. We just recently had Temple Grandin on again. Hour and 15 minutes, incredible conversation, even better than the last one, probably. I don't know how, but I do want to say this because now that you mention it, her portrait was just placed in the Smithsonian Institute. So that's why I just called her, and then she told me that along with her portrait, which was Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and Steven Spielberg, and there was one other, but that one I will not be able to remember. And I was really excited about that. That's an incredible competition. She equated it with almost winning the Nobel Peace Prize. I equated it with it's just huge. She's done so much. So check it out. Check out the chair across the aisle as well.
Love it. Love it.
All right, guys. This has been the Political No Brainer podcast. We're doing it again in about 2-3 weeks. I'll be texting everybody and I'll tell you when this one's out. Thanks so much, everybody.
Talking to you guys as always.
Yeah, good to see you.
It was a pleasure. Y'all take care. Be well.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, guys.